there like crazy.
There are some big piggies there for sure, where I am.
Oink, oink.
That sounds like the one in the middle if there's a ton of big piggies. Is it... Did you have to like... that giant cave in the... kind of in the middle where there's the...
All right, looks like we
hole,
are online.
and then you go up the cliff there, kind of...
There's a bunch of arches around there. I don't know.
Okay.
I have not explored the entire map, so I don't actually know whether it's the middle or not.
Fair enough. That's true.
It's middle for you.
It's far for me.
Yeah, I guess I'm at the point where I know too much about the game, huh?
You got 1,000 hours? I've got like
Looney,
60.
I'm fairly certain you were at that limit 500 hours ago.
Well, 100 hours is a tutorial from what they say, so...
Yeah.
So I don't know if I've even finished the tutorial yet.
Well, I mean, you got to nitrogen. You're pretty far now.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, boy, oil is a big enough level creep there.
Man, you haven't even gotten to aluminum yet. Oh, no, you have.
I've just started the hell known as aluminum scraps. My gosh.
Yeah.
Hi, Lizzie.
Wait, she joined or is she just in the chat?
She's
Just
in
watching.
chat. So yeah, my plan is mostly we're just going to talk about stuff, and I have a couple of generic games to have as backgrounds if I don't have anything specific I'm looking for.
Talk about stuff. What kind of podcast is this?
Well, you've been here a lot, so I feel like you should know the answer to that question.
I'm practically still just a guest star at this point, but sure.
I kind of view it as my time to, make sure I'm talking about video games and not other stuff.
It's half the reason I started it, just to have a nice spot for all of us to decompress.
Because, when I was younger, I could talk about video games all the time, but, being an adult makes it hard to do that.
I'm just like, I gotta talk about nanometers.
Part of a problem of being overleveled.
Indeed.
It's like, you're talking about work, you're talking about fixing your car and all that good stuff.
Or your garage door.
Oh, yeah, I gotta replace a hinge on that, too. Oy. Problem is sometimes you have those ones where it's like, oh, I need to fix that, but it's still functional, so I'm not making a huge priority of it.
It's a metaphor for my life.
We were kind of limping along, and then the door just stopped moving.
Like, I don't understand. Why did it suddenly stop? There were no warning signs.
I mean, the warning sign was it only went up like 5/6 of the way, but it was enough that we could get our cars in and out. So I was like, eh.
Probably fine. All right. Well, it's go time. I will get us started. I was but a lad, and my parents handed me this brick right before we went on a car trip and said, hey, this is a Game Boy. And I was like, holy crap, that's a Game Boy, because I had seen commercials for it. Commercials like the one we are currently seeing now, where a kid defeats a robot at Tetris or something, and then will, in doing so, earn the right to murder said robot. At least that's my interpretation.
To the Shadow Realm. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
the laser finger.
I'm
just
just
a
telling.
different time.
Yeah, look, you could just do things to robots back then. We're gonna pay for this in the future. But this is episode 43 of I Think We Overleveled, and we're going to talk about the line of Game Boys because it's a very interesting period in video games, the portable market, and the fact that Game Boy kept an entire line going for, I swear, darn near a full 16 years.
It was a long, long run. I mean, just the original Game Boy was super long.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So, I'm just gonna ask first. Who here owned the original, like the brick?
I owned an original brick. I don't know where it is now, unfortunately, but I did own one.
I don't know where my
I
original
get a
brick
brick.
is. Yeah, I don't know where my original brick is, but luckily, when my grandfather died, they're sort of divvying things out to grandkids, and one of my aunts who was doing it's like, hey Jordan, I know you like video games. Do you want their original Game Boy, which was something they bought specifically so little grandkids would have something to play at their house? And I was like, heck yeah, I want that. And so it's now sitting proudly on my shelf. Still works when there's batteries in it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And that is one of the killer features of the Game Boy. That thing is darn near indestructible.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
That was like the lore of our childhood, you know? All the stories of, oh, this one survived a fire, this one went to space, this one was flushed down a toilet, this one, you know, like
This one was on Captain N.
Yeah.
The indestructible Game
We
Boy.
don't talk about that.
Let's see. Speaking of the indestructible one, oops, scrolled too far and too deep. This is the one that survived the Gulf War.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, this for those who don't know, this is one that I believe it's the Nintendo store in New York City.
Okay.
It got damaged. I believe it was by a grenade. In the first Gulf War, someone found it and they brought it back because it still worked.
Oh wow, the screen even still works.
No, the screen, they replaced the screen.
Oh, okay.
But
I've
that's the
seen
only
versions that
that's
have
the
gone through
only-
similar. That
yeah, but that's the only thing they replaced. Literally, all the hardware you're seeing is the original hardware, and it can play the game.
I feel like these buttons would dissolve if you touch them. But
Well,
I don't know, I
that's the
guess.
point. Notice it's not a human playing it; it's just playing the game.
Yeah, notice it's behind glass.
They don't want people to touch this thing. But the
I mean,
point,
so
They're
It still
saying
runs.
it's indestructible. They don't want people to test that theory.
I mean, in practical experience, it was pretty good. I mean, I grew up with my brother, and we shared a room and a bunk bed, and he was on the top, and he would sometimes play games until he fell asleep, and more than once dropped it from the top bunk, and often it would be not just like in front of the bed, but like against the wall, against which, and so it would hit like parts of the bunk bed on the way down. Nary a scratch on this thing. I mean, like, imagine doing that with like a modern smartphone. I mean, like, boy,
yeah. What was wasn't the joke like it's made of Nintendium or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
I believe it.
No, it's one of the things that causes people to complain about modern Nintendo hardware issues. It's like, you know, your stuff used to be a lot more durable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
While still
yes.
being very competitively priced.
I mean, to be fair, it was a very thick, large plastic package compared to the actual electronics within.
Well, like even the Wii,
Now you could only play it if you're in direct sunlight, but
Yes.
Yes, these are shortcomings that
No,
we
but
should
like-
discuss.
but like even the
viewing
Wii
angle was
the Wii Iwata made, like, one of the things he said was it has to be able to withstand like 200 pounds sitting on it. And his engineers were like, why? And it's like, because we're selling these to families with kids. They'll sit on it.
what
So-
family has a 200-pound shot?
Well, he also, like, a father might step on it and stuff like that.
Well,
he wanted it to be
a
durable.
kid would
That's-
leave it on the
okay.
floor and it'd get stepped on.
Fair enough.
Well, and we're only talking about Japanese adults, so not American.
True. Anyway, yeah, so the Game Boy, while being very good for its time, yeah, that screen would only work if you were looking directly at it and in good lighting.
and
yes.
holding your tongue just right.
And oh gosh, That was actually one of the things that drove me nuts about the Game Boy. And when the Game Boy Color was announced, I was more excited about the increased viewing angle than the addition of color by a factor of like 10.
But the color still wasn't backlit though, was it?
No, it wasn't backlit.
Well, that's jumping way ahead to get to the
I know
color.
that's jumping way ahead, but I'm just to say how bad that viewing angle was to say that when the Game Boy Color came around, I was more excited about the viewing angle of my existing games than
I swear it was like a 20-degree cone.
It was very hard, and if you didn't have light, but that's also why I got the craziest looking accessories.
Oh my goodness! I remember when we got the lamp.
Had like the giant lamp with a magnifying glass on it.
We had that one. What was that
we
one?
had that for our original brick.
Yes.
And like I had basically like a giant backpack that was just for the Game Boy and its accessories,
I was so mad because we used to have it was the official Nintendo branded one, and a few years ago I was like, oh my goodness, do we still have that? And I was like, oh no, I sold that a long time ago. Like, no, I bet that thing sells. She probably just got rid of some garage
was
sale.
Not awesome. The earbuds. Those earbuds stank.
We never had the earbuds.
It's funny. I used them. I hate earbuds now, but when I was that young of a kid, I put up with those.
I put up with them because they were the only choice I had. But man, you take a sharp breath and they fall out.
Sometimes I wonder if the reason why I hate earbuds now is because of those earbuds from back then.
They ruined you.
Let me see if I can find the Game Boy official earbuds.
Those things were like hard plastic, man.
Okay, I found the back of the box.
I thought that they shipped with them, or maybe I don't know. I had them.
They weren't.
Was pretty sure I got them.
They definitely weren't part of my my whole thing.
Well, I got it for Christmas, so maybe that's why I had.
Well, they had a bazillion different packs here. I found the.
Yeah, we had the little carrying case.
But yeah, here's their earbuds, which for the time was actually. I don't remember there being a lot of in-ear.
Oh, that's right. And weren't they?
It really wasn't. It just kind of sat.
Weren't they color coded so that you could remember which was left and right?
I remember
that's probably why.
Those were the earbuds I used, and
they're the Switch colors.
I put up with them. There are times where I think, man, I hate earbuds so much now, and sure enough, I'm like, but I wore them as a kid, and those were the ones. I got
foam covers.
I'm sorry.
That they would
I am
better.
way distracted by the selling points on the back of this box. State-of-the-art compact video game system for portable handheld video action.
Oh yeah, so this one came with the cable and the headphones.
Yeah,
and Tetris.
Completely self-contained.
And reversey.
My very powerful CPU and microprocessor. Even back then, we should not claim this had a powerful CPU.
It had one. We could say that.
It has a processor, but yeah,
it has a processor.
The adjective "powerful" is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Well, even back then, because the Game Gear was something that
existed.
An
excellent processor.
That's the thing. The Game Gear existed. But
when did the Game Gear come out?
I swear it was later though, because Game Boy was like 89, I think.
Yeah, the Game Boy was nothing but a battery marketing device.
Well, you mean the Game Gear?
Or Game Gear.
Yeah, because the Game Gear chewed through batteries.
What did that take? Like 10, I think.
So even though I think
it was
powerful
8.
CPU.
Okay, wow. Okay, listen to this. The Game Gear came out in 1990 in Japan. But that's only 1 year after the Game Boy came out.
Only 1 year.
And 1 year later, it came to North America. For some reason, I remember it being longer.
No.
That's
the thing
you
were asking. I'm like, no, it wasn't that long.
I don't remember seeing them until second grade, so that would have been like 91, 92. I guess it's about, yeah.
And that's the thing, that the Game Boy outlived the Game Gear, so it's like you said, calling the Game Boy a powerful CPU is beyond a stretch, because the Game Gear is the one that had the powerful CPU, but well, the problem is the whole, power management.
Yeah. Well, and the
And
game
that's why the
design.
Game Boy won, because 2 batteries could last a decent amount of time, whereas on the Game Gear it couldn't at all.
No, well, I think this is going to go to, I think, my first thing I want to talk about with the original Game Boy. Look, its form factor, not very good. The speed at which games can play, also not very good. So they didn't design games around that. They instead designed games around slow, methodical gameplay, which for the Game Gear, that completely contrasts with Sega's entire setup. Like the speed which Mario's running here feels fast. It's not actually that fast. This is also probably the most optimized of all games on the original Game Boy, Super
I was
Mario
about to say,
Land 2.
I'm like, this game's actually kind of fast though, but yeah.
Yeah, compared to like what you can do in Mario World or Brothers.
Think about the first Mario Land. That
Yeah,
game was so slow, ridiculously slow.
And it was ugly, too. Let's just be honest.
Whereas this actually has some personality to it.
I mean, this looks like Super Mario World for the SNES, actually.
Yeah, this looks really good.
This is another one of those, we've had the conversation how if you look at Mario 3, you can be forgiven for thinking it's on a completely different console than Mario 1.
100%. Yeah.
And Mario Land is definitely in that category of how is Mario Land 2 is definitely how is this on the same hardware as Mario Land 1?
Yeah, it's like night and day difference.
I mean, look at how tiny everything is.
Yeah.
They did not know how to use their pixels, which is interesting because this is clearly a design choice. They wanted to be able to communicate that same amount of informational fidelity that they did in the original game. So it's super zoomed out so that you can clearly see everything coming at you because you're on a really cramped screen. Like compare that to like the original Sonic games on the Game Gear, and it's just everything's attacking you from off screen because you're going so fast.
And just to the viewing angle, I mean, like, this is such great contrast compared to my typical experience playing this.
Oh yes, because this is not what it looked like on the actual screen. This is black and white rather than green and also green.
and as the battery decreases, it just gets like fainter and fainter, but like it was never a hard cutoff. That's something that I always remember. Is just like, oh no, the sound's starting to crackle. Like no,
save the game, save the game.
Oh, not many games had saving though. But also though, I mean,
there was die so I can get a password.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I remember about Super Mario Land is like you can only play. I mean, you can get New Game Plus, so to speak, once you clear it, and then like they add more enemies and whatever. But like you have to start from the beginning every time. And I remember I went through like I think maybe the most was four runs, and I was like, oh man, I'm really good.
I must have focused on the games with battery backups because most of my Game Boy games could save.
See, I'll be honest. I actually never owned a Game Boy. I had friends with them, and I played them plenty. But yeah. So no, the first game that I remember like really, really getting into and wishing that I had a Game Boy for though was this one right here.
Classic, absolute classic, man.
Like I'd played other games. Like I played Super Mario Land. I played Tetris. I played, all these. Never actually played Pokemon on the Game Boy, but when I played Link's Awakening at a friend's, I mean, I've said for years my favorite Zelda is A Link to the Past, and this was a direct sequel to it.
Yeah. Which was not something I knew till way later in my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at that time, saying it was a direct sequel in a Zelda, that wasn't a novel idea.
Yeah. But it's just
like
other time it was done.
You had the original Zelda. Yeah, because you had the original Zelda, and then you had Adventure of Link, and then you had A Link to the Past, which was a flashback. It was a prequel, and then this was a direct sequel. And so it's just like, it just feels like moving the story forward. And then, of course, Hyrule Historia came in, and things got all kinds of wonky.
all kinds of wonky.
Yeah.
But man, this is still held up as one of the best Zelda games ever.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, and
It's
we'll
it's a great game. And the remake is amazing too.
Can you also pull up the for later the Game Boy Color version of this, because we're definitely talking about that then.
I still need to play that version. But
Anyway,
I'll look for it.
but obviously, look, it wasn't black and white. It was chartreuse. It was chartreuse.
Juice and green.
Puke green, smeared green, and then black.
And black.
Those are your 4 colors. And I don't know why those were the colors that they chose. Clearly, it's for design reasons, but
well, also probably for well, I don't know.
Probably better contrast and for an affordable screen.
Color,
yeah,
possibly power usage,
and probably materials. There's all sorts of things it could be.
Because it wasn't backlit, and green is something that your eyes.
It was a liquid crystal display, I think.
Yeah, it was liquid crystal. Yeah.
Well, so the original brick, solid, dependable, but it did eventually get a redesign. Obviously, Baggins didn't, but did anyone get the Game Boy Pocket?
I had friends again, and I thought it was kind of neat, but
not a step I took.
My family took this step mostly because I was now at the age where my sisters were now wanting to play stuff on it, and for the long car trips, fights over the Game Boy were not fun. And so my parents they actually got one that I now understand, didn't know then, was a collector's edition. We got the golden Game Boy Pocket that came with Donkey Kong Land 2 Diddy's Conquest.
Nice.
And apparently that thing sells
from a Pizza Hut box.
Yeah, exactly. But no, and so I played this, not this model, obviously. This is silver. The golden one I had, that's the one I played the crap out of the original Pokemon on, trying to catch that Tauros.
And, are you sharing that somewhere, by the way? I can't see your picture. Oh,
okay, I don't have a way to share a still image. You know what? I'm sure there's a Game Boy Pocket commercial though. There has to be, right?
I've got it running already.
Sorry. Oh, it's not. I gotta rewind it.
I just saw it.
Well, I mean, you start. Yeah, there we go.
They're playing with it wrong.
I mean, they're like, yes. Like, look, we're holding it.
But the main issue with this thing, because I remember this thing had no battery life.
Oh, really? This had a worse battery life than the original?
Because
did it only take 2 batteries instead of the 4?
It was smaller and lighter, and so it just I think it only had the 2. And it's the same thing. It's not any more powerful. It's just we made it lighter,
smaller.
So that it'll fit better. So it'll actually fit in your pocket.
But it was slow.
Yeah, it ran just as fast as everything. It's just the thing that got halved was the battery space.
It's expensive, but it's slow.
I'm just remembering one of the big accessory upgrades I remember getting for the Game Boy was a nickel something, I can't remember. Rechargeable battery pack, basically. It gave it
nickel metal hydride batteries.
Yeah. And it gave it this fat butt, basically.
We had that too.
Well, I think for my original brick, I had the Nintendo Brad one, which was. That one wasn't nickel metal hydride. It was nickel cadmium back in those days.
So it made it it wouldn't fit in the pocket?
Huge, yeah.
Well, I mean, original game. No, this is original big brick that I had that for. So that wasn't fitting in the pocket anyway.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
I actually think a lot of these peripherals. I had that
battery pack too.
I think a lot of these peripherals is also partially why Nintendo was slow to do a remodel, because there were a lot
whole ecosystem.
Yeah. And the ecosystem was doing well.
Well, and the peripherals, that there was a light for it, there was a magnifying glass for it, there was it's just basically so you just buy it piecemeal rather. It's the budget airline of game systems where you just buy the base system and then they nickel and dime you for every other little piece.
I mean, in all seriousness, that is kind of what Nintendo's old model was when you think about it, because
Nintendo loved its peripherals back in the day.
yeah. Well, and then on top of it, you just have things like they're trying to sell more games. Like that was in the end, their goal. And so their hardware would be very competitively priced, and the games everyone knew that their hardware wasn't as good as their competitors, because that's everything the competitors would highlight. But it didn't matter because Nintendo's like, yeah, but you don't play for you don't play for the hardware, you play for the games.
Is it fun?
Well, because that's the hard part with like I've always felt like that era of Sega, part of their problem was most things weren't developed in-house, and so it was constant third-party licensing of games. Well, it's hard to build an identity on top of that. And so outside of Sonic, there wasn't a lot that Sega was developing that was them building up what their identity is, what type of game is a Sega game. And mostly, I think, just gaining the expertise, because Nintendo had kind of gained about a 5-year head start on most of their competition. Oh yeah, I can't believe there's an entire Metroid game on a Game Boy. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, this was one of the original games I had that did have a save file, and this.
Okay, watch this.
Color, though?
Look at how much the game slows when she bounces, and then as soon as she finally lands, all right, now we can move again.
Oh yeah, well, and it's interesting. This game in particular, all of the I don't know, the lore behind it, like this did a really good job of telling a story just through the atmosphere, but it also caused a lot of the really iconic things about, because they did. I mean, this version is playing on a Game Boy Color. That color was not there originally. But since they couldn't just change the color of her suit, that's when they added like the big shoulder pads that's now super iconic.
For the silhouette and the distinction. This is what Samus looks like. This is
So Samus's design is largely because of this game to make it distinct.
I mean, that's the story of most early Nintendo games. I mean, that's the reason Mario has a mustache. Because there's like
overalls.
Yeah, it's like it looks weird. Make it a mustache.
And a hat.
Yeah.
Granted, this Metroid's also interesting because it's simultaneously a great Metroid game and a terrible Metroid game at the same time.
It's dealing with its hardware issues.
Yeah. But
it's a better Metroid game than it should have been.
Yeah, but I mean, the crampedness actually kind of works for it to a degree, though.
Well, because you're going down into these caves, and so there is this feeling of claustrophobia.
Yeah, well, and you look at how it's spaced out. Once again, the way Samus moves, it's kind of floaty. It's a little more methodical.
Yeah, it's slower than other Metroid games, absolutely.
And so they just let the gameplay fit with the screen it's on. But no, it's interesting how those early limitations forced adaptation in a way that it's different now, because now they can do a full creative vision, which, for some of these games, it's like, I want them to be able to do a full creative vision, but it's also, I guess it's just the point. You can't get one thing without giving up something else. It's all about trade-offs.
Well, there's the trade-offs, but there's also like the thought that a lot of the most iconic and best things were created because of limitations, and without those limitations, people don't have to come up with creative solutions anymore. I mean, you can say, well, they can now have their original vision, but I don't know if that's necessarily better than, I had this vision, but that's impossible with this hardware, so I made this change to still go for what I was going for, and it ends up being something that the identity of it.
It's the same sort of thing. Like, if in that vein, the special edition was George Lucas's original vision for Star Wars, and it's, in my experience, been universally the original is preferred.
Yeah.
And it's just because there is a charm in that grittiness that, what were we able to make, on a shoestring budget?
And 1997 CGI was not the solution.
Yeah. Well, and even for Metroid
even 2025 CGI isn't always the solution.
No, but definitely not 97.
I don't know if the remake can be considered the original vision of Metroid 2, but I think a lot of the storytelling was lost with the 3DS remake of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, particularly near the end,
Well, I mean, I prefer the fan-made version.
Me too. I think the fan-made version preserved a lot of what made this game special that was taken out. And to be fair, in the remake, I do like the Chozo Laboratory area, especially its music, but I also consider the Chozo Laboratory as completely destroying the story, because it is kind of a built-in of the story that the deeper you go, the more desolate and empty things become.
Right.
Such that the last area, there's no monsters to fight. Why? Because the Metroids killed them all. Yeah. And in the remake, they're like, oh, well, that was too boring, so we're going to add all the monsters back in and make a new area out of it.
I would love to know.
Ruin the story.
I would love to know if, how that conversation went down, because they had it. And I would love to know if they decided it's too boring, or if maybe some suit decided it was too boring.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be very. I would love to find out.
Meddling.
Well, it's because I can totally see some executive being like, "Look, I understand what you guys are saying here, but this isn't that's not the era this game is coming out in." Well, it's one of those I can already hear the justifications as to why. But
there's always a reason why.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I would love to know, but there's no way we'll find out for another 10 years, because Mercury Steam will definitely be under NDAs for anything like that.
There are so many interesting touches that they've put in to this game. Like, as you get close, you see the shell of a Metroid, and it's just like, okay, that's something they didn't have to do.
Well, it's something that they didn't do in the original. They didn't have that environmental storytelling because they were figuring out what the NES could do completely.
Oh, absolutely.
So having something like that's a huge set piece that would require so much of your hardware space. You couldn't do that. But it's interesting. The Game Boy, they actually started being able to do those background elements, like even Mario Land. There were some bigger background elements that you a lot of times wouldn't get with your with the original Mario Brothers, because the original Mario Brothers, it's all being spent on the foreground. Well, we can't put everything on the foreground on the Game Boy. So what can we put? We can put something simple on the background or the foreground. So how do we do it? And it's like, how about a Metroid husk? That's something that means something to the player.
It's incorporated into gameplay as well, because it's not just that it means something. It says, hey, you're running, because in the game you're running around looking for Metroids. Here's your sign that there is one to find.
Yeah. And it's very good use of what you got.
There's your sign.
Yeah. Well, it's something that they'd later really take to the next level. Especially in the 3D ones, but Metroid Dread, for example, there is so much background storytelling in Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
Okay, we're focusing a lot on this one game.
Yeah, it deserves it.
We probably want to.
But okay, let's move to the Game Boy Color, since we're here. So when they announced the Game Boy Color, it was a very interesting time because they
when was that? About it was like 95, 96.
The Game Boy Color was 98. It came out way
97.
Stuff I'm seeing, at least here in America, is saying 98.
98.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I know I was.
It was a long run with
know I
the
was in
original,
junior
that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like this was back when me and my buddies were, Pokemon was out and still pretty new, and we were big into Pokemon and trying to catch them all. And like I said, I was super psyched and excited that, oh my goodness, we'll be able to see it from a wider viewing angle. Like we won't need direct light anymore. Like I was psyched about it to the point like I wanted to get a Game Boy Color as fast as I could so Pokemon would be visible,
Do you I'm going to turn on the sound for this one.
You did skip over an iteration, by the way.
We're not talking about the Game Boy Light.
I'm not what? I'm not talking about the Game Boy Light.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Super Game Boy.
Yeah, that's not a Game Boy.
Oh, the Super Game Boy.
I think
that
as we're
before
talking
Color?
about, this was a big deal for me. Because this was a plug-in for the SNES. You put Game Boy games into it. Because I wasn't a handheld Game Boy game player. I didn't know. Again, I didn't have one, but
Dude, I got one from a retro store not that long ago.
Just 1 sec. I want to go back. I'm going to turn the sound on for this. Just this, everything that's going on. I want to hear this. Unmute tab.
Brace yourself.
I knew. I was like, I swear there's like a creepy voice.
It's Super Game Boy from Nintendo. Play your Game Boy games on the Super NES in living color. Even choose your own color combinations. Play
I forgot
all
about that
350
feature.
Game Boy games. How does that
Choose your
strike you?
own color
Super Game Boy
combination.
for the Super NES. Game Boy games in color.
That
Intense.
existed for the Game Boy Color as well.
I mean, it's probably the same architecture.
I went straight from Game Boy to the Advance, so I don't even know about those.
This was my first opportunity to
That
play
was
a lot.
4
of Game
years
Boy games
before
that
the
I
Game
didn't
Boy
have.
Color.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, this was.
And so this was my first opportunity to play like Super Mario. I remember I played Super Mario Land 2 on this.
Well, in certain games had like
They were
stuff
compatible.
built in to have to be compatible with it to add colors.
Well, they had like special borders and stuff as well.
I think they
special
showed. Yeah,
borders.
here the Donkey Kong was the
Yeah.
big
Uh-huh.
one. This is the Donkey Kong that has the out of nowhere, insanely awesome remix, Battle at the Tower. If you've never heard it, go listen to it. You'll be shocked at what they can do on a freaking Game Boy architecture. But no, this game is kind of brilliant because the first 4 levels are just recreations of the original Donkey Kong levels. And at this point, everyone will have played so many different arcade ports of things. So when you beat it, you think, okay, well, we're done. And then Donkey kind of just slaps you to the ground and then takes Pauline to the next level. And you're like, what? And then they start introducing new mechanics and stuff. And you're just like, oh my goodness, it's an entirely new game.
But yeah, so the Super Game Boy, one of its biggest benefits, I think, is it got over a lot of you lost the portability, obviously, but a lot of the downsides of the Game Boy it just got rid of because you don't have to worry about the screen, the battery power, the all of the weirdness with it. It's like, oh, these games that I don't want to deal with the downsides of the Game Boy for, because a lot of people didn't. It's like suddenly they're much more accessible.
And this had the best viewing angle of all of them.
Well, and the other thing that was cool about it was just the fact that it's dumb, the ability to choose the colors of the screen. But there were certain games did play better with certain color combinations.
Yeah.
No, the other thing I really liked about the Super Game Boy is the fact that you mostly just the fact that you could then draw on your own border, which I don't know why me and my buddy BJ were, interested in that, but we could draw our own border because we were children. They always looked awful. It's like a really bad Etch-a-Sketch.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're drawing with an SNES controller.
Yeah.
Like the SNES didn't even do that. They had a mouse for it for Mario Paint because they're like, no, what? This is not meant for drawing.
I wonder if you had that, if that worked.
I don't think it did.
Probably not, but I wonder. The other thing is I love the ultimate in stupidity. I want to say it was a Scott the Woz video about playing games on the go, that were supposed to be console games, and then he like puts his Super Game Boy into a portable Super Nintendo thing to play a Game Boy game.
Sounds like something he'd do.
Just to see if it'll do it.
You know what? I have a Retro Duo portable. I should try that.
What a tremendous waste of resources this is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Come
But
to
now
think of
that
it-
you've said it, I have to do it. I have to.
Come to think of it, I am fairly certain that not me, that my family still owns the Super Game Boy of my best friend growing up. Because I think
Nice.
he left it at our house when we moved.
Oh, wow.
I really should return it to him after 30 years. Anyway. But yeah, no, the Super Game Boy was good. That was the other thing. There were certain games you actually wanted to play at home. Like that was part of the whole complaint about Pokemon.
Well, especially as, the scope of these Game Boy games got bigger as they figured out how to fit these bigger games onto the hardware. It's like, oh, this is a game that I actually want to sit and just fall into.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Pokemon, of course, was a big reason why I wanted the Game Boy Color because, we were going to each other's house to play. I mean, I would ride my bike without touching the handlebars, playing Pokemon while riding my bike. Not the safest thing to do, but, when you're a
Why let that
teenager,
stop you?
a young teenager, you don't let something like safety stop you, right? Indestructible syndrome that teenagers have and all that. But yeah, no, being able to see it better. Oh my goodness. And there were some decent. I'm trying to think if the Pokemons had Game Boy Color advantages or not, but at least the yellow and above did. But I'm not sure about the original. But man, this was good times. But yeah, it's kind of weird when you think about it, because at that point there still were basically Game Boy games. Even though there were some that could only play on the Game Boy Color, you were still essentially just playing the same Game Boy games that were like over a decade old. Maybe not over a decade old, about a decade old at that time. Like that was a really, really long thing. Because now I'm just thinking like there's already talk of like, a new Switch and a PlayStation 6 and all that, like all these rumors coming out on that and announcements on that. And I feel like those just barely came out. I mean, that's also just part of being over-leveled because I guess the Switch is older than I like to think.
Yeah, time flows quicker.
The original Game Boy lasted from 1989 to 2003.
Yeah.
Which even like Nintendo had come out with almost 3 different consoles at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had come out with 3.
Yeah, 3. It was almost onto its 4th is what I meant.
Yeah.
Well,
true.
It's like even
actually,
with,
no, even the GameCube had come out at that.
Yeah, the
point.
GameCube came out with like 2000-ish.
I thought it was 2001.
Well, in 2003 is after 2001.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wasn't the
2001?
Game Boy Advance like in full swing by then?
Yes.
I
Yes.
know I was in
absolutely.
high school when
Well,
it came out, so
Well,
yeah.
yeah, because Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime came out on the same day, right?
Like
Man, you guys are obsessed with Metroid. It was Golden Sun. That is why I got the Game Boy Advance.
don't you worry. We will be getting to Golden Sun.
That is why you got the Game Boy Advance.
We are not forgetting
Oh, boy.
about Golden Sun. I do want to bring up this commercial for Game Boy Color, which is a video I've always wanted to do, which is the Game Boy Colors all morphing into the various states as it plays like a rock version of America the Beautiful. Like, this is...
Japanese product.
Yeah, well, All I know is I want to stack rank like which states are going to be the best to actually play a Game Boy on.
With the Delaware version. Tiny little
Alabama's pretty
piece.
simple.
The
I love how Colorado actually just looks like a Game Boy Color.
But I think Colorado and Wyoming are a bit too wide. I'm thinking
They're too wide, yeah.
Yeah, true.
I think I'm going with North Dakota here. I think North Dakota is going to prove to be the most effective game screen.
I think Arizona is pretty decent.
Arizona's not bad. I think the left-hand hold.
New
Actually, you know what?
actually pretty good too.
Maybe
Mexico as well.
maybe the left-hand hold actually with the river there isn't going to be as bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I'm sure California, like, you know, boomerang.
Texas is totally unviewable screen.
What's with the screen?
Texas, look at Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Okay,
Don't get me started on
Maryland.
Idaho. It's upside down.
I know. The screen's on the bottom, and
How does Michigan work?
Don't ask me about Michigan, man. Oh man,
I don't get how Michigan works. How does the peninsula work?
Well, wait. This is the thing. This commercial actually had a stinger. Because then Alaska to Hawaii have to fly in.
Hawaii. Okay, yeah, Hawaii, sure.
Hawaii would be a little bit difficult.
Let's see if we could freeze frame on Hawaii. Alaska will be fine. Hawaii, like what are they doing here?
Yeah, you got particles. I don't know.
You got to juggle while you're playing so you can hit all the buttons.
But I've always felt like a video that just ranks each state for how good they'd function as a Game Boy.
Louisiana actually wouldn't be that bad.
Louisiana's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. I don't know. Arkansas actually, I think, is in contention to be okay.
I think Montana is another of my favorites.
But I think like the Midwest, or not the Midwest, like except for Texas, I think most of like the
Western states do better.
Particularly the things that are just barely east of the Rockies, I think are doing okay.
I'm sorry, Texas looks like an original Xbox controller.
Oh, Texas is going to be unwieldy.
Fine, the corners cut out, you know.
Yeah, that's going to piss me off.
I was like, which part do I hold on to? Well,
and trying to get to the
N64,
AB buttons, like my goodness. I need to write some of these jokes down.
Did you ever have that one guy at your school who would play the NES with his index finger and middle finger instead of over the buttons?
What madness!
Yes, I've seen that. Well, I mean,
they'd always say, "No, this is the best way to do it. This is superior."
Oh no, the person I knew is because he had a prosthetic hand, and that was
that's a better excuse.
That's a fair excuse.
Okay, Ludisar, the better way is to set that up you set him up in a trap question, then you just go like, he had a prosthetic hand, and then you can high road him. It'd be great.
Oh,
he's being aimless.
Instead, we get to high road you.
It's honestly, it's like you haven't watched any politics.
It's like you don't know us.
Fair enough.
Man, I've been obsessed with this commercial my entire life.
This is the first time I've seen it. This is
West
funny.
Virginia is a bit.
Oh yeah, Mountain
Froggy.
Mama. That's not going good.
Indiana's not bad, actually. Just looking at it.
Illinois, Indiana, they're doing okay. Iowa, okay, it's a reorientation, but that would work-ish. Minnesota's not that bad. You get a lot more screen space, actually. Actually, Montana, ooh. Even though it's a fake state, Montana might be okay.
The buttons on the other, yeah.
It's like a Joy-Con prototype there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the nunchuck setup.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you just tilt it upwards, like you go vertical with it, but I guess the right side handhold, not the best. I still think North Dakota's taking this. North Dakota, I think, is the closest to the original form factor.
Because after that it's Colorado and Wyoming, but they're a little fat.
Just a little wide. Like they're a little too close to the Wii U pad.
I'm a fan of Sweet Home Alabama.
Alabama's not doing too bad. Now there's Mississippi for once.
Mississippi's is a little bit funky.
It is, but it's not doing it. Look, I'm coming from
Put it at
Texas.
49th or 50th.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or is Louisiana look more playable than I feel like it should?
I that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I think it's not a bad form factor.
You know, because they rotated it, Oklahoma's not doing too bad either. I mean, you just have that unfortunate N64 dongle coming out the bottom, but other than that,
poke your eye out, kid.
yeah.
Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas is doing fine. You know, Kansas is actually in competition with North Dakota. Now that I look at it.
Well, it's even got the same little curve that the OG Game Boy had.
Good old Kansas City. Great googly moogly.
I probably do need to make this video. This might actually be a video that could go viral.
Oh gosh.
I probably do need to make this thing.
You may need to start doing some 3D modeling yourself so that you can get it.
Dude, yeah, you need to 3D print a bunch of these, you know?
I'm not 3D printing these things. That is not happening. If you
it's
want to go
50,
ham,
man.
you want to go ham on 3D printing this? Don't get me. Okay, actually, come to think of it, for Etsy,
What would the provinces of Canada look like?
I'm just.
Gosh.
I think they'd be much better because they're very vertical for the most part.
Yeah, they're very vertical. And
Newfoundland
square,
might be a bit wonky, but otherwise, yes.
Is Newfoundland
Prince
really
Edward
a
Island would
place?
probably be a bit off.
No,
I don't know.
I'm
It's where all
suddenly
the chrysalids are.
Actually, Lunisar is someone who has a 3D printer and has a wife who's artsy. If you could make like a 3D printed version of this map and sell it, I don't know that it wouldn't sell.
Interesting. I mean, granted, it's our library that has the printer, so we can't just do whatever we want. But
You'd have to market it a bit. I mean, like the number of people that remember this commercial. I've never seen this commercial.
Well, what you do is you make one, and then when you sell it, you use that to buy your own.
No,
Fair
wait,
enough.
no, you 3D print a 3D printer. I've got this. It makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Oh boy.
Yes,
He's
that's
looping
how
again.
engineering works.
That is how Thank you for noticing. I mean, I'm not wrong. All you do is engineer
Don't
one
give
tool.
the machines
No.
the ability to self-replicate.
I'm not giving the machines the ability to self-replicate. I'm giving Lunisar the ability to self. Oh wait, no, I think nature did that. Anyway,
Gosh.
Da-da-dun.
Wow.
Da-da-dun, da-da-dun.
you wouldn't 3D print a 3D printer. Anyway,
Why are we pulling Dara references?
why not?
Steal some post-it notes.
All right, so Game Boy Color. Sorry for this. I've been waiting on this. This isn't Game Boy Color. What is this?
This is the first game in the Mana
Final
series. This is
Fantasy Adventure.
Final
Look
Fantasy
at this.
Adventure when
Seiken
they were
Densetsu 1.
Seiken Densetsu 1. They didn't want to call it Mana. They wanted to capitalize on the name Final Fantasy. But it is Secret of Mana 0, as I guess some people could put it. But I'm trying to think, but have they given it an official English name other than Final Fantasy Adventure? I'm not sure they have.
Prequel of Mana.
I think I saw
I'm
Sword of
confused.
Mana.
I was really trying to lean into Game Boy Color game, and you've torn me back to World of Black and White. What is going on here?
Just because I love this game is all.
This is what we call a derailing. My lead-in was
Oh,
terrible
man.
now.
No love for Bubble Ghost.
Well, do we have a good Game Boy Color example? Oh, actually, I guess we do.
Come on, man.
There we go.
I foreshadowed it and everything. But seriously, like this is one of Nintendo's first remasters. It's not
Yeah,
the first is Mario All Stars.
Yeah, All Stars. Thank you.
Which was a classic.
But this is one of their first, and it's a really good first outing. I didn't play it, but it is. I'll be honest, I didn't know about Link's Awakening until the Game Boy Color.
Oh, dude. Link's Awakening and then the Oracle games as well.
Yeah.
Which I never had the Oracle games, but my nephews
Yeah. The
Oracle
ones,
and
I only got those
Cisco.
when they came with the 3DS.
I remember being moderately upset that the
I'm sorry,
egg
did
was pink.
Petrivka say Oracle and Skippo?
Cisco.
Okay, I was like, I don't get this reference.
Oh, Oracle. Okay.
I don't know Zelda Oracle, so I just like Cisco.
Oracle of
IBM.
Season and Oracle of Ages. It was
I have
IBM,
severe
now
doubts that you
cartridge
thought that was the correct answer, Pirate.
I didn't. The first Zelda game I ever played was Ocarina of Time. Just saying.
Ooh.
I don't care if you've never played a Zelda game.
Ouch.
You're not going to assume that it's Oracle and Cisco.
I don't know about you. Legend of Zelda Cisco is the pinnacle of the series.
I mean, to be
The
fair,
server
Link's Awakening,
Let's
Link's
be honest.
Awakening kind of is a virtual machine. So
Legend of
Oh, that's
Zelda,
true.
Oracle, and Cisco would be the first multiplayer Zelda. It'd have to be.
Really
Red
would.
Hat.
Yeah, it'd be online multiplayer. Have to be. If it's not, it'd be false advertisement.
Anyway. But it's interesting just to see, just even with, look, it's not like the Game Boy Color has the most expressive color palette in the world. But
It had one though.
that's what, but even with what limits it had, because like this is still behind the Game Gear in terms of graphical fidelity.
Yes, it is still behind the Game Gear, even though it came out over like basically a decade
5
later.
years.
that
6
was
years.
one of the things that was interesting about the Game Boy is the Game Boy kind of had its own identity. Other systems like the Game Gear were trying to replicate one of the, ground consoles.
And trying to be like, we're this on the go. And the Game Boy's more like, no, this isn't an
We're the
NES
Game
on the
Boy.
go. It's its own games. Which is
Mhm.
partially why some of the games have, like, Nintendo always has issues whenever they try and reinterpret their portable games into a non-portable environment, because
Mhm.
it's as we talked about before, the limitations really define it in some ways.
Uh-huh.
Which is why they decided to stop making separate ones.
Yeah,
I think it was a brilliant call.
it was.
I agree.
So does Valve.
Hey, I think that was all the Steam Deck was also a brilliant call.
It was.
I use
And-
both.
Steam Deck Switch 2 looks like another Steam Deck. Everything looks like a Steam Deck, to be perfectly honest.
Steam Deck
to me.
is great. Well, that and also, Steam Deck holds a very special place in my heart because it allowed me just to say goodbye to Windows forever, because that's what, I didn't know why Valve put in so much effort into making games playable on Linux, and then the Steam Deck comes out, it's like, it makes sense now.
I just needed something when I traveled for the holidays and I didn't have my PC with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or as Gordon calls it,
Well,
his
and
sanity machine.
And I
These-
didn't want
yes.
to be limited to only any Nintendo games
Or,
when I traveled.
on the phone, mobile games or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So did you guys get a Game Boy Color?
I
did not.
absolutely did.
Negatory.
I got it as soon as I could. So, as I was talking about earlier, so I could play Pokemon and not have to worry about, having a giant brick in my pocket while I was going to my friend's house to trade Pokemon, be able to see without having to have a light bulb directly, especially when I'm at my friend's house, it's like I don't know exactly where the best lighting is for the Game Boy. Wasn't an issue with Game Boy Color. But yeah, no, me and my friends were very big into getting the Game Boy Color as soon as we could.
I gotta ask, which Game Boy Color did you have? Which color? Because this was right smack dab in the middle of Nintendo's Attitude Era.
Well,
It was also
mine was the OG purple one.
It was the iMac era where it's like we'll give it to you in whatever flavor you want.
Well, the first one,
As long as it's black.
That's
I think
four.
I think it took a few. I think when it first came out, there was just the purple one. I think it took a little bit of time, not long though.
Oh, this was
before
the
they
Game
made
Boy
other
Pocket.
colors.
But it's still
It had to develop yellow dye.
But no, mine was the original purple color. So I probably got it really early.
It's
Since
probably
I
the
think
most
purple was the
common.
only color at the time for the Game Boy Color.
This
But they had, I mean, this was before the Game Boy Color, and they were making these Game Boy, what
Yeah.
were they, minis
Pockets.
or pockets that were
The
colored.
different flavors.
Yeah.
I had this model. Oh wait, it's gonna be too big. I'll figure it out. I had this model.
Well, I will say, I actually really like the color of purple they used. It's the same color of purple for the OG GameCube, isn't it?
And the Game Boy Advance.
It seems like it in my head.
I had the see-through color, the
I
see-through
would have picked
purple.
that one if it was available.
I had that for the
definitely would've.
Advance. I had a
I'll just
see-through.
post. This is the one I just posted an episode of planning. That's the one our
Yeah.
family had, and I thought it was so cool. I could see into the hardware.
The clear one.
Yeah, no, I definitely, if that was available, I would have gone with that color.
Well, again, this
That
era
cool.
was big on see-through tech.
Oh yeah, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. The funny
Where
thing
it's
is,
like you can see the parts of your machine.
you know, it's funny people act like it's a big feature when, you know, plastics are see-through. They add dye to make them not see-through. So.
And they didn't even have RGB back then on all the little components inside.
No,
Oh no,
they did not.
Gosh.
It's like, why would anyone bother without LED strips?
The best is when you start getting like loose components underneath, and you can now see them wiggle, and you're like, "Oh, that's a concern. I wasn't concerned
Like,
before."
uh-oh.
Okay, dude, they didn't even have blue LEDs in existence back then, Pirate.
Did LEDs exist?
LEDs, yes, they had red and they had green.
Yeah,
But they didn't
that
have
was
blue
the
yet.
power. Your power indicator was
That's
an
right.
LED.
Yeah, that was an LED. Yeah, sorry, that's now a dumb
no,
question.
I mean, the reason why there weren't LED screens back then is because they only had green and red. They hadn't figured out how to get blue to work yet.
All right. So I don't know. Game Boy Color. It's weird.
Haven't yet finished C.
It's weird how big a, like, I remember it, even though it actually, like, it was another very small half step forward. Like it wasn't that big a jump.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the conversation that I had with my parents around the time was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I want one of these. Like, I can play with color. Like, well, can I play any games that your old Game Boy can't?" I'm like, no, but
It
they're like,
could
well,
though.
then you're not getting
It could. It actually could. There were games that were only for the Game Boy Color.
Well, I didn't know that because I didn't freaking have the internet.
See, this line I basically kind of skipped over. I never had or really played much on a Game Boy Color. It was just sort of not something I did. Even like friends stuff. It was just
Well, why would you if you had this Game Boy, the Super Game Boy?
I didn't have a Super Game Boy. My friend did.
Oh, well, your access to your friend. You owned your friend back then.
This sounds like a healthy relationship that Pirate has imagined for you.
But
Hey, I used Bill plenty of times, so I understand.
But man, the Game Boy Color, I absolutely loved it. That was my Game Boy for, oh goodness, until I want to say 2009. Like when I
Wow,
like I had the
okay.
original brick, and then when the Game Boy Color came out, that was my
That
Game
long,
Boy
man.
until 2009.
Oh wait, no, wrong one. I clicked the wrong one.
You doing
Ignore me.
good?
I did not get the Game Boy Advanced.
You did not.
See, this was the first time I was like, okay, now there's a reason to upgrade. I could sell it to my parents.
Oh, what's that?
But no, so this, first of all, the design for this, so much more comfortable in the hand. Just way better than how close together you're holding your hands for a Game Boy. Because it's closer to an actual controller. It's
And now the
incredible.
screen is in the middle.
Yeah, the screen's in the middle, and this is probably, technologically speaking, a much bigger jump from the Game Boy Color to this than it was from the NES to the Super Nintendo in terms of the actual technology behind it. Now, granted, it had more time.
I mean, a lot of people called it basically a Super Nintendo in
Yeah.
a Game Boy.
Well, I mean,
and they ported a lot of games from the SNES to it.
And didn't just port it, like they had whole new like segments. Like there are, like, if you play what I forget, because the Mario numbering system gets so borked by all this, but like whatever their rendition of Super Mario Brothers 3, they have like master levels, and they bring in elements. Like it's almost a proto Mario Maker, because they brought in elements from different Mario games into levels. Like they brought in the you know how in Super Mario they have those like triangles that if you run, you can run straight up. The
wall run.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
vertically. Yes.
they had a whole master level built around that mechanic in their Mario 3 game, and they even in that game they built like a floating island that just had triangles set in the corners. So think of like a really squished octagon. And so if you started running on it, you would just run forever in a circle. Because it keeps you stuck to whatever surface you're running on.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got real creative with their ports too. But there was one game.
Well, Final Fantasy, they made whole new dungeons. Some of them they actually did complete remakes with like.
Oh, really?
Final Fantasy 1 and like Final Fantasy 1, they completely remade for Game Boy Advance, and they added dungeons and. They did the same with FF4 and
4 and 6.
They have they call the master dungeons, I think, or something.
I did get some of those. I haven't actually played through them on that, but like I said, because I bought them to play, because my experience of playing Game Boy Advance games was playing it on a DS Lite, because I didn't have a Game Boy. Though this original form factor, I mean, you talk about how it is more comfortable, but at the same time, I remember I had high school buddies that got the Game Boy Advance, and I kind of wasn't that impressed with it, if I'm honest, because, you know, they had a much better screen, but that one still wasn't backlit. So, and its viewing angle was still pretty poor, if I remember correctly. I think it might have been.
I think it was still better than the original, but
yeah. Well, it was better than the original.
It's hard to beat.
I think it was probably better in the Game Boy Color still too. But,
it was better than the Gear.
But without the backlight, it was just a pain. I still think to use, honestly.
I still had my old Game Boy Light, so I was fine.
And my high school buddy, he did actually mod it, where they opened it up and put a backlight in it. So he actually had one with this form factor that he had modded to have a backlight.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody who was modding stuff. But you were talking about them bringing over like Final Fantasy and like remastering games for it. This system is the one that introduced me to the JRPG with Golden Sun.
There it is.
So, see, for me, Game Boy Advance was Golden Sun Advance. that was the game I played on it.
The part I can't figure out is how I owned this game, because I had never heard of this game whatsoever. My mom, for a vacation, she just showed up. She had bought 2 games for me, Mega Man Battle Network and Golden Sun. And I had not
Battle Network. Oh my gosh.
I had heard of Mega Man, but Battle Network, what the crap is this? I don't know. But Golden Sun, I hadn't heard anything, and I don't know how my mom had heard of it, because I know for a fact she was very skeptical of anime back then. And on top of it all, like, it wasn't like it was in anywhere. So I think she just literally looked down and said, he looks like he might like that game, bought it. And she just pulled up like 2 just absolutely perfect picks out of nowhere.
I also kind of find it funny that it's like a JRPG that Splice has played and I have not, you know?
Get on my level, man. But in all honesty,
you haven't played Golden Sun?
No, I have not.
See, that surprised you of all people. Wow. Okay.
Well, I'll defend him a little bit. It kind of feels to me like Golden Sun is sort of like baby's first JRPG.
A little bit, yes.
I didn't have a Game Boy Advanced. I didn't have any access to Game Boy Advance games until you know, the DS was already in full swing with tons of its own RPGs, you know. So by the time I could play a GBA game, I was playing, you know, stuff on the DS Lite.
Yep. See, I never had an advance. All of the advanced games I played were on the DS or DS Lite.
And so now, of course, what's funny is Golden Sun is one of those games. From what I've heard about it, it's kind of a very polarizing game, from what I understand.
I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it.
It's incredible. Who? Okay, what are the negatives that you've heard?
Oh my goodness!
And Gordon wants to know the addresses of where these people live at. He's got conversations he wants to have.
Track them down and explain to them why they're incorrect. But please,
why
go ahead.
they're wrong.
Well, the funny thing is I'd heard Golden Sun before, but I hadn't heard much about it. And then I had a coworker that just out of nowhere decided to talk about Golden Sun and just go on the largest rant about how it's one of the dumbest games ever made. And he even had a website dedicated to how dumb of a game it was.
Oh wow!
That says a lot about
me.
your coworker.
So it's like I had this coworker just give me this huge rundown about how bad this game is, and then I come to find that this is like one of the beloved classics of tons of people, and I'm like, I haven't played it, so I don't actually have my own opinion on it. But it's kind of funny having heard the less common side more first. But like this website was it was dedicated to showing how poor the writing was in the game, to where they say, look, we've written down all of the entire script of the game, and we have a randomizer to randomize the script lines with different characters, and you can go through and reading the randomized script, it makes no changes to the games or the characters. The writing is so poor, it doesn't matter which character says which line. But, you know, hearing all this, I'm like, since I've never played the game, I don't really have a dog in the fight. But it's just funny when I hear how much some people love this game.
Of all the things to complain, the writing wouldn't... I don't know.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not actually taking a side on this because I haven't played it. I just think it's funny.
Defend your former co-worker's position.
I just don't understand. That's what you focus on. I would think like maybe gameplay, maybe like
a
level progression.
This is one of those games where the plot is actually the driving thing, not the characters.
Interesting.
But it works.
Yeah, I'm definitely sort of just learning about this world, and especially for someone
and
like
the sequel had more, you know, characters, strong moments.
Yeah, but especially for me, it was all about. I had never seen anything look like this.
Okay, by the way, this is one of my favorite parts of the game that they're showing here, where you get a dialogue option with this guy. You think he'll die. If you say yes, he will die.
Are you kidding me? It's Schrodinger's NPC.
You're putting the power of life and death into the hands of children.
So wait, if you say yes, he just dies right there.
He dies. He blinks like, you know, like an enemy being defeated. Like,
okay, this was the other thing that sold me. The first time I got into a freaking battle and they simulated like a 3D zoom.
Battle screen is great.
I absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
I was pulled.
They can randomize the voice line, so oh gosh.
Gordon's gonna beat up your old coworker.
Where does he?
I would pay to see that. Okay.
But seriously, like that 3D zoom right at the start, the first time I saw it, I was just like, what?
Some of these animations are fantastic, especially when you get like the howling weapons and all that stuff. Oh man.
The battle system for this game is actually very, very smooth.
It's fantastic.
Especially for how limited, like, it's one of those things, I wasn't thinking of it at all back then, but looking at it now, it's interesting how they chose to use their limited screen space to make sure that it didn't overtake everything.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I couldn't believe, like, I was seriously, when I first saw it, I'm like, wait, this game's 3D? No, it can't be. Plus,
sort of. It's sort of.
Yeah, it's using sprites to fake it, but it's just the fact that they could fake it. Like, that blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the funness of it's something that Pokemon had already been doing, but it felt different from Pokemon. The powers working in the overworld as well.
The psi energy powers.
Yeah. Just because it actually felt like you were interacting. Oh, and also you saw a guy die.
Wasn't one of the Golden Sun games like had a solar panel on it, and depending on how much sun it got, like it would affect the abilities in the game or something?
What?
Or was that a different game? That must have
not
been a
aware of
different game.
that.
Maybe it was, but I don't know that.
I didn't buy that accessory, I guess.
No, I think I'm thinking of a different game. Oh, I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, so that's the thing is I played games on all the Game Boy systems, but shockingly enough, I never owned a Game Boy of any sort.
Of any stripe. Wow.
My first portable system was a DS Lite.
Oh, I was about to say Virtua Boy.
that I bought from that is not portable, and you don't.
Yeah, speaking of which,
We
does
will-
the
we
Virtual
will
Boy
have-
belong
we-
in this Game Boy discussion.
No, obviously not. Second of all, no. That's a different video altogether.
Talking about cul-de-sac and video game design.
Oh my goodness,
But
that
the
is
thing
a
is,
perfect
that's one of the
example.
reasons I got a DS Lite is because it would play Game Boy Advance games, and there were a lot of Game Boy Advance games that I had wanted to play but been unable to. And so I spent far more money than I should have when I was a poor college student to buy a DS Lite.
Oh,
And
dude,
it was stolen about a week after I bought it.
wait, what?
Okay, I can't say
Oh.
full on stolen. I
You
went to
lost
a
it.
I went to it was actually a picnic for the club that we were all in, and I left my backpack there and
Lost it
never
at
got
a Quark event?
and went back like an hour later. It was gone, and I never saw it again.
Did you get another one, or?
I got another one, but it was several years later.
Well,
This is an honor code violation.
Was this before or after you showed me Rune Factory?
Before, I believe.
Okay.
It was actually one of my first events with the club.
Oh, so it was even an earlier one than when I first went.
Like
to...
I got a DS Lite shortly after DS Lites were released.
Okay.
And I left it behind and went back an hour later. The backpack was gone, and I never saw anything.
Oh,
So-
man,
That
that's
was in it
awful.
again.
I've lost track of the timeline. When did the SP come out and all this?
It's funny you should mention
SP is worth talking about. Yeah.
I want to say
I thought that was after the advance, but before the DS.
that. Yes.
Maybe
'cause-
I'm-
yes.
Yes,
SP
yes.
came out before DS. No,
It's a
DS was
cool.
kind of we're replacing the Advance.
Well, SP was the one where we're gonna put a backlight in it.
Yeah, well, this was
And
the
a
last-
rechargeable battery.
It came
this
out.
was the
Rechargeable
last
battery.
Game
Came
Boy
out in
that I ever
2000
owned.
It came out in 2003, and then it got the re-release with the improved backlit screen came out in 2005.
Now, this one, do you think it's a worse form factor because you were saying you liked how the other one was wider, whereas this one gave it back to the original like Game
Control
Boy
below,
form factor? But the clamshell is pretty awesome.
Yeah, the
It was
clamshell.
a razor.
It depended upon how for the more portable games, it was better just because of the clamshell. But
Well, this was also when all of the flip phones were kind of a big deal.
That's true.
the
Everyone
whole
had the razor.
part of the I believe it was Iwata talked about the reason they were starting to experiment with the clamshell was they were getting more and more high level with the screens themselves, and the screens were getting more and more expensive to replace. And so they were looking for designs where they could protect the screen a bit more during travel.
Like I know when they developed the DS Lite, like they said, oh, it has to be able to take a fall from like so many feet in the air onto concrete and survive. Like that was part of the design spec.
Yeah, but the SP, I like. It's one of those things they were starting to have to balance different problems, and so you're starting to make different concessions.
So I don't remember. Did the Game Boy Advance introduce the suspend feature, or was that not till SP?
No. SP didn't have suspend.
They didn't have a suspend feature. I swore that there was
DS
something like
did.
DS was the first with that. I
that.
think.
DS
was
was the
DS.
first with that.
Wow.
Because the SP was not like it didn't have any new capabilities.
No, it was
other than
basically the
backlight
Advance.
and
Yeah,
the battery. It was
The
all
backlight,
hardware.
Yeah, that rechargeable battery though, that was a big.
it was a big deal for sure.
Oh yeah, huge deal.
So I had, because I had my Game Boy Advance, I just had no desire whatsoever to get the SP. That wasn't until I saw a very specific SP, which I just linked in the episode planning. The Game Boy
the NES Classic.
The
NES
game
Classic.
the classic. This, I saw this and I was just like, oh. I think this, I literally think this might be my first nostalgia. Like where I wanted to buy something for nostalgia reasons alone.
Yeah, well, and like the one that's current, I don't think I'd get it, but the PS5 Pro that's made to look like a PS1 aesthetically, that thing's pretty sweet looking, but too much money to bother with.
I just remember when I saw this come out, it's the first time I felt nostalgia, just like trying to rip money out of my pocket. And it's just like, what is this? And to which it's like, be careful for forever dominate your path. But it looked so freaking cool.
Micro.
Oh, jeez.
What did the Micro look like? I don't think I know that.
It looks like
tiny.
it looks like a worse Game Boy Advance is what it looks like. Let me see.
Well, I'm trying to think. Did Micro play advanced games or did it play original games?
No, it was a Game Boy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was smaller than the Pocket, basically, huh?
Yeah, here.
Let's see.
Well, it also was kind of shaped like a controller, though.
Oh, here's
like
one
an
with
NES
someone's
controller,
hand in
wasn't it?
there. Okay. I got one.
Yeah, it was tiny.
With the banana for scale?
Here, I'll post it here so you can see it in someone's hand. It's in the episode planning.
Oh, I've never seen that. Oh,
yeah, it's
weird.
like the size of an NES controller.
It lasted like 1 year. It was...
Oh, but it does play GBA games. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason I knew about it is I was I was dating a girl who worked at GameStop.
Did that one have a backlight?
I think so.
Well, so also understand this thing says Mother 3 fan translation. I don't think the one I linked you was a.
It's a yeah.
I don't know. I mean, my
manufactured.
My high school buddy
okay,
who
here we
wanted
go.
his-
Found it. A Game Boy Micro is a handheld game console developed by Nintendo. Blah blah blah. A lighter redesign of the Game Boy Advance. The system is the last Game Boy handheld.
Okay.
So yeah, it could definitely play Advance, but I mean, look at this thing.
Oh, it was after the SP.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, this one was a gimmick.
Yeah, I do remember. I think I saw a commercial for it and thought, yeah, I'm not buying that.
You know, I look at this and it makes me think of the N-Gage, if anyone remembers that.
Oh, I remember. I had a friend who had
Looney, I know exactly which commercial you're talking about, and you'll note that I didn't put it on here.
The gaming taco, I think they called it.
Our friend Ben had an N-Gage, I believe.
Oh, jeez.
No. Which one was the phone? Also a cell phone. Was that the N-Gage?
I think the N-Gage had a phone built in.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was Nokia. It was a Nokia device, right?
Yeah, I think he had the N-Gage, which I was just like, I was fascinated by it, but I was like, I have zero desire to own this.
Well,
Did
you
you
know
see the
why it
N-Gage's,
failed more so than anything else, right?
Well, it was
Why?
expensive, wasn't it?
It was
Wasn't it like
it was
$400 or $500?
Expensive, yes, but the other problem was people figured out how to pirate the games immediately.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
jeez.
Oh.
And you already gave them a cable for downloading stuff. It's because I think they just basically put like the code of the game just out there, and everyone just like, wow, okay, well, thanks for all your games.
No, he said there were some interesting games on there, but it was kind of hard to sift through the junk ones to find the good ones. I think I could be remembering that conversation completely wrong.
I just remember it looked so awkward to hold.
Yeah.
Well, so before we get heading out, there are a few games everyone brought to the table that they wanted to discuss about the Game Boy era. So whoever wants to go first. Don't everyone jump at the same time.
We've talked about most of the ones I was thinking. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I've got one.
There's more
Okay.
Metroid. There's always more Metroid.
No,
You
before
guys-
Metroid.
Oh,
Not with that.
Gargoyle's
Yes,
Quest.
with that.
Yeah.
Let's go back
Yes.
to the original Game Boy. This was one of the first games I played on the Game Boy and thought, oh, this isn't just Super Mario Land. There is more to this system
So
than
this one
just
is
Super
one of
Mario
those
Land.
passwords, though. Like
It was a
expected you to
password game.
save, but you had to save via password.
But it was a platformer with a plot, which that wasn't really a thing early on.
No, it was not.
And this one's kind of a strange plot too,
It
because
was a
you're playing the
hybrid.
villains from Ghost and Goblins.
I completely forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah, these were all the villains from Ghosts and Goblins, but in the demon realm where they lived, and it's a plot line in that realm.
Well, and this
Great.
game
I'm starting to think about the Gargoyles cartoon. So, all right.
yeah, and then this game did get a sequel for was it SNES or NES?
Yeah, SNES, Demon's
SNES.
Crest.
Demon's Crest, yeah. But I just remember playing this and being like, because
This game's awesome.
between the platforming levels, you're moving around like you're in a
Like an
Final
RPG.
Fantasy game.
Yeah.
I'm
It
now
was
because
an
of what
RPG that instead
because
of
of what
random
Pirate
encounters,
said.
you
I'm
had
now reading
platformer
everything
levels.
in Keith David voice. They are
Like
Say
the
it in
Elias.
Keith
strong.
David voice.
Because he said it's Gargoyles
Right.
Quest. I'm just thinking of Disney's Gargoyles, and I'm just sitting there. Return to the realm immediately. Everyone's
Hey, man,
Keith
enough.
David now.
He'll walk through hell.
It's like, you can't say that on a cartoon. We're talking about different things. Sorry.
They said it
Yeah.
in the cartoon.
But yeah, it was in it was kind of made to be like a combination of part RPG, part platformer.
Yeah. Which, that was my exact ADHD, button. Because I liked both of them and I wanted to do both of them. And this said, here's both of them.
Well, it's kind of like ActRaiser in that
Oh, I
regard.
loved ActRaiser. I have way too much to say about that game. So
Great game. Whereas Demon's Crest, however, is less RPG and more just platform.
yes.
Well, actually, that one's kind of more practically a Metroidvania. Because, I mean, this one kind of is a Metroidvania platformer.
A little bit.
Yeah. But I did love this game.
I did not
It
play this
needed-
game. I have never
I
seen
It
just
it.
needed
remember
a
the first
save
time I-
file so bad, though. It really
I just
did.
remember the first time I played this being like, what is this? Can they do this?
He cannot fly. He can only glide on currents of wind.
Well, the more you level up, the longer he can fly.
Well,
Quit quoting
it's a
gargoyles
hover.
and throwing it right past them. It's rude.
I knew you would recognize it.
I
Oh.
absolutely recognize it. I just decided not to acknowledge it.
Okay.
If you don't
Okay.
acknowledge him, he'll keep doing it.
He did it.
He'll never learn.
Okay, as much as I love the Gargoyles cartoons, I don't remember every episode well enough to have caught every line that you've said, but
That was kind of a basic premise of the gargoyles, though.
sure.
Anyway.
But as he says it, that's actually the premise of how he moves in this game too.
It is.
Yeah.
That's why I said it.
He can climb walls, and
Can glide short distance. He's dangerous
Well,
in
that and
very
also
short
the
distances.
climbing on the walls
No,
is such
that's
a cool
dwarves.
mechanic. Too.
Oh wait! Oh crap! mixing my metaphors.
I mean, you're mixing your John Rhys Davies is what you're doing.
There's a very specific subset of people who get these jokes, and they're truly cultured.
We're here.
Okay, we need
The Venn diagram is
some
just a
Jonathan
circle that
Frakes
is
in
our
here.
podcast. All right. Yeah, I had not seen this one. What was the Final Fantasy one you guys were talking about earlier?
Adventure?
The Final Fantasy that was not a Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that was
but
like a
mana.
mana game. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy Adventure.
I think we briefly
What?
had it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
is when Squaresoft decided to make a game like the Zelda, done in a Zelda style.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, for name recognition in the US, they decided to name it Final Fantasy Adventure. And actually, there was an RPG that they also made for the Game Boy that's, it was the Saga series, but once again, for name recognition, they called it Final Fantasy Legend.
Legend. Yep.
Which is kind of funny. But yeah, this is the sequel to this game is Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo, which is such a great
I
game.
think it kind of plays like Mystic Quest a little bit.
Well, the reason,
Except that the actual combat is.
well,
on the
it's
map,
funny.
but-
This YouTube video does say
true.
Mystic Quest, but the reason why is Mystic Quest was the name that this game had in Europe.
Mhm.
So the first Mana game
so
in the
that we
US,
have
they
no
named it
way of
Final-
knowing what to call anything.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's all
so-
kinds of messed up.
Yeah, so I think
Oh, man.
the remake they call it Sword of Mana. I think that the remake of this game they call Sword of Mana, but in the US it was named Final Fantasy Adventure, and in Europe it was called Mystic Quest. So
It's
there'd
like,
be
oh,
no
so
way to
people
know.
don't understand what to do with this.
Yes, they just didn't know how to name this game, but it was a fantastic game. This is also, I'm trying to think, was this the first time they introduced Moogles and Chocobos? Because I do wonder if that has something to do with.
Did this
it
come
being
out
Final
before or
Fantasy.
after? In the U.S., probably, but I don't know if this came out before or after.
Well, did this come out before?
Two,
or
I
after
think, was the introduction of
4?
Chocobos.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
I think 3 introduced Moogles.
But like in Secret of Mana, they decided to remove Chocobos from the Mana series.
Am I
to make
witnessing
it
the first
distinct.
escort quest?
But they kept Chocobos in Secret of Mana.
Oh no! This is.
Or no, I mean Moogles, not Chocobos.
Well, you're not having to protect her. She just helps out.
Oh,
so.
okay. I was about to say, like, did she get hurt? Is she like freaking?
No, she'll
Natalia
heal
from
you
Golden
on
Eye?
occasion. Though.
Oh, well, that's even better. Then.
Yeah, but yeah, this game actually did have Chocobos in it. Secret of Mana is the one that had Moogles.
Right.
So
That's
there was
what I meant.
definitely crossover with Final Fantasy. With
Well, my
Mana
first
games.
exposure to Moogles was in Secret of Mana.
Really?
Well, I didn't play FF2. I didn't play FF3. Moogles weren't in
Both.
4, and Secret of Mana came out before 6.
Actually, yeah. That's
Because
true.
2
There
and
were
3
no
didn't come
Moogle-
out in the U.S.
You can
Yeah, 2 and 3
literally
didn't come out in the
hear
US.
the gears in Lee's mind turning, like, huh, that checks out.
Well, I'm just trying to think. Did 4 have any Moogles? But
4
you're
had
right.
no
I don't think
Moogles.
4 didn't have Moogles. So yeah, no, that's true. Secret of Mana was the first time I
No
saw
muggles.
And
Okay,
so
again,
for the
you're
longest
going
time,
for the wrong
people would
series.
talk about how Moogles were a Final Fantasy thing. I was like, no, they're a Secret of Mana thing.
Yeah. But the first Mana game also had Chocobos in it.
I'm now
sorry, I was
realizing,
just hit the sword behind him while climbing down. Like, wow.
I'm just suddenly realizing with this discussion of Moogles in different games that if someone had never played a Mario game, they'd think Chain Chomps originated from Link's Adventure.
Yeah, no, it's exactly like that. Now, one thing that's interesting though about the Chocobo in this game though is it is the first and only instance of a Chocobo cyborg that I know of. Because
Chocobo Cyborg would be an awesome band name.
I just noticed that Lee said Chocobo
That's my Black
Cyborg
Magi.
and didn't bother clarifying that statement whatsoever.
So you get a
I
pet
don't
Chocobo in
think it
this
needs
game.
any clarification.
It does.
but
It needs a
gets-
lot.
It gets severely wounded at some
Ocular
point,
implants? I mean, what?
and the blacksmith guy builds it new legs and makes it kind of robotic and has mechanical.
Okay, what is
limbs.
the technology level of this fantasy universe?
Final
Diamond
Fantasy is
Suit.
everything.
Looters.
Dude, Dwarves can do everything. That's the technology level.
Magitech armor, man.
Why
love
isn't everyone
that,
getting this for no reason?
I love that Splice is trying to classify the technology level of any Final Fantasy game.
You
It's like,
already
oh, this is
told me this isn't a
class
Final
three.
Fantasy
like
game. This is a mana game.
I believe the title says Final Fantasy Adventure.
We all know that doesn't matter, and you know it. We just had a conversation about it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's like, where did you live when you played this game? That's how you know.
But yeah, no, this was a great mana game, and it actually had a pretty sad and impactful story to it as well. So they did a good job with it.
All right. We ain't getting out of here without talking about Metroid Fusion.
Metroid Fusion. Man, I had such mixed feelings of this game when it came out.
This game was one of the reasons I wanted a DS Lite, because I wanted to buy
this was
this
like
game.
Well,
I had to emulate. Sorry to say.
It came with my 3DS, so I played it on the 3DS. But because it was part of the 3DS Ambassador program.
Actually, I think I played this for the first time on the GBA player on the GameCube.
But my buddy, the GBA player, nice. My buddy who had it, so I remember my buddy playing this in high school, and he was kind of telling me the story and showing it to me, and I was actually kind of disappointed because it sounded like the story was that Samus was like permanently fused to her suit, and I kind of didn't like that concept. And as I play it, I'm still not clear on what the story is with her being fused to the suit is. Especially because the ending, she still has the normal.
I need you to stop and think about this.
X-Parasite did stuff.
You're in a no, that's not even the point. You're in a Metroid game. Suit doesn't withstand contact to the first enemy in the next game.
Like, the game has a start burst.
There is no permanent solution to her suit ever.
You have to lose everything first.
Well, and like of course, the endings of this game still has the same caveat where, if you beat it fast enough, it'll show her out of her suit. So I'm like, but I thought it was like mechanically part of her now. I'm so lost. I don't understand.
If you finish it fast enough, you save her so that she's not stuck.
But once I actually got to play it, though, the gameplay is fantastic. Like, it, honestly, I think more than any other Metroid game gave me that fear and dread from the SAX.
Yeah, the SAX was absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying.
Just, it has the slow, inevitable walk. It's not running after you. It's just walking towards you, and if it gets to you, you are toast.
Like, I know Dread's called Dread because of the Emmy scenes, but those were well done, but I still think the SAX was scarier than the Emmys.
It definitely was, but the reason I think the SAX was more terrifying is more because you didn't know when you were going to run into it.
Yeah.
Because I find the SAX easier to run away from than the Emmys were.
Well, that, and I do feel like if you've played Metroid games, the thought of having all of your powers that you've played with for multiple games turned against you is a lot scarier than, here's some robot that's coming after you.
That's exactly. You know exactly what it's capable of because you have felt just, that godlike feeling of I am become death.
Well, and this is
just like, that's turned against me.
This suit is Samus when she was at her most powerful at the end of Super Metroid.
Mm-hmm.
And so it hurts even more for that reason. But the other reason it works is just because of all the ways that Samus has just magically lost her powers out of nowhere, this is the one that makes the most sense.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
The only other
line dramatically altered her appearance. It made me sad as a teenager to learn that.
No, but
they made her brunette.
What if that's what it did?
That's what
It turns out being blonde was a superpower all along.
We wanted her to be blonde so bad.
Oh,
I mean, to be
gosh.
fair, she had green hair originally, so
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. No, but the thing that stands out is because between that and I think Prime 2 Echoes had the other one that I was like, okay, I can buy this as a, because like that one
Where
they're
they
actively
stole it from you.
they're literally stealing them. And it explains why you have to beat bosses to get them back. It's like, it's literally, that's the guy. That's the one that stole it. He's the one who jacked your ride.
mm-hmm.
But this one, yeah, just the atmosphere. It took everything from from Super Metroid, I mean, about the atmospheric, just ambiance makes it sound relaxing, but
No, ambiance is right.
okay, it's just, the
Is this
eeriness.
before or after Prime in
It's
terms of
concurrent.
release time? I was about to say, like, I think
Yeah.
I played Prime before this.
You could link them together to unlock stuff between them.
Or was that
Yeah,
Zero
this
Mission?
one and Zero. I think both of them.
When did Zero Mission? Which came out? Zero Mission or this?
I think this came out first, didn't it?
Son of a gun! I can't remember time anymore.
I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure like this one had cross stuff with it was either Metroid Prime or Metroid
Zero
Prime
Mission
2.
came out in 04.
But this one,
This
it
had
had
the
the
two.
same release date as one of the Metroid Primes, Metroid Fusion did.
It must have been the first.
Fusion came out in
This one came out in
2002.
02.
So it was Zero Mission that came out concurrent with Prime then, right? Or was Prime in 2000? Dang it!
Actually, it was Fusion that came out at the same time.
Right? Yeah. Because now I'm remembering my timelines and how it works. Because I
And couldn't you
graduated
get like
in
the
04.
Fusion suit on the GameCube if you connected it?
There was something with
I
connecting it.
Yeah, there was definitely something. Though the one thing that I'm trying to decide if I like or hate this feature of this game of how doors would sometimes lock behind you, so like paths that you took before get closed off.
This is definitely
Try
the
and force
most was railroady of the Metroid games, I feel.
Yeah, it was the most railroady, but at the same time they anticipated potential sequence breaks and would comment on it if you did it.
Yeah.
It
But-
also was the most chatty Metroid up until that point.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, a lot more dialogue.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're gonna railroad, you better tell a good story.
Mm-hmm. And they did. The other thing that they did that was really interesting, and it also made the SAX so scary, was you got the cold weakness,
Yeah.
and the SAX had the ice beam.
Yeah, once again, That's
The
something that if you
interesting
hadn't
turn on
played
the
the
head.
well,
Mhm.
it's interesting because I feel like to really get the feel that this game had, you had to have played one of the earlier games to understand it.
Mhm.
Which you would not say is true of the previous installments.
Right.
Yeah,
I know so
it's
many
not true
people
of the
who played
previous.
Super Metroid and didn't. Like, if you told
and
them
Super-
the second game's on the Game Boy, they would have looked at you with confusion.
Well, the thing is that
Well,
Super Metroid, it gave you.
It was a direct
the-
sequel, but it told you what you needed to know.
Exactly. It gave you all the relevant information in the story cinematic at the beginning.
I felt okay starting with Prime, personally. That was my first Metroid.
Well, Prime was, it's outside of the. At the time when it was released, it was considered outside of the main timeline, even.
Now we
Works for
don't
me.
know.
Yeah. Now we don't know anything.
All
They've
I
gone
know is
back
that I crashed Splice's Prime 3, so.
Yeah, because you wouldn't come out of the freaking ship. You just kept poking buttons until you hit the one that said
Well, I was like,
crash the
there
Wii.
so many to try.
What did you do, man?
Wait, it broke
So,
it?
you know how in Metroid Prime 3, you start off in the cockpits, it's showing off all the controls that you can do with motion. Pirate was sitting in there and just playing with all the buttons like a child and somehow crashed my Wii.
flight simulators, and so I was like, well, what does this all do? They all
flip
have
up-
functions.
No, they don't. Their
Well,
function is to be
one of,
pressed.
one of the functions was to crash the game.
Apparently, I don't know what you did, but you crashed it. It was just proof that
So
you
what
couldn't
you're saying
handle the
is you-
responsibility.
So what you're saying is you died before there were even any enemies in the game.
Yeah. That was as far as I ever
That's
got
the
in Prime
skill you
3.
got there.
Shame. Prime has such a good storyline. Anyway, I think that's all we have for the Game Boy games. It's already late, so I should probably just cut it off here anyway, because we're at almost 2 hours. All right. Game Boys were awesome. That's my final statement on this. Anyone want to add anything like that?
I never had a Game Boy.
I'm glad that the Nintendo handheld is great again.
Good. All right. You know what? Let's start with Baggins. Do you want to promote anything, Baggins?
I'll talk about the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. If you like Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, Splice and I and another friend of ours named Amy have a podcast where we talk about it. We record every other Monday night over on www.youtube.com/Cosmere Studies, or you can check out that YouTube channel or just look for our podcast on any podcast app to find it as well. So, yeah, it's fun stuff, fun times.
Looney.
You know what? I will just promote making goals and working towards them. That's how you get everywhere in life.
Dun 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 dun.
Petrivka.
Thank you.
Nothing to promote. Just happy to be here.
All right. I'm going to promote Lunasar's wife, Lizzie. You can find her, Lizzie Petrichor, on Twitch TV.
You're not trying to break them up again, huh?
No, that only happens on accident.
He's trying to save their marriage. No.
Yeah. But
He
you
likes
can-
to take credit for it.
yeah, I do. That's canon. Not canon that I take credit. I'm responsible for it. It's definitely me. Anyway, you can also find me at twitch.tv/splicestream. I'm doing Quizzard on Saturday, I hope, if not 20 questions, because I'm really hoping to get the rest of this done. It's taken me forever, but I think we're going to have it, at least in rudimentary form. The Quizzard retrofit.
Cool. Has anyone matched me yet?
Well, no, because I'm doing a retrofit, so no one will ever match you.
You were the
You're
sole
just-
champion.
You're just too high.
You're
too
the salt.
powerful.
You're going to be the proto Quizzard.
Well, you know what that means? It means I think we overleveled.